All right, it's time for everybody's favorite segment.
You've got questions, and we've got answers. Ask a CodeHead.
Boom. Here we are for Ask a CodeHead. You've got questions, and we certainly do have answers. So this week, our question comes from Sarah in Wichita, and I will email you to get your address, Sarah, if you're listening. She asks if you could instantly master any one aspect of resuscitation or eliminate one frustration or remove a barrier, what would it be?
Wow. That's a really good question. And from Wichita. That's cool. We haven't had anything from Kansas yet.
It's a first timer.
I really like that question. There's a lot to say, but I'll home in on maybe just obviously one particular area. And this will be a pre-hospital perspective, so it won't necessarily apply to in-hospital, but that's why Bridget is here, right? So we have two different insights from our, varying backgrounds. So this might sound, I'll make this make sense. So during a code, say I show up to a code and it's only me and one other person. So in the immediacy of the event, as we know, we've talked about this ad nauseum since episode 1, and I think we're on 34 or 5 now, just so everybody knows. Yeah. We got to get on the chest, boom, and we got to defibrillate them if they're shockable. So those are the two roles that the two of us assume immediately. End of story. Get away from that airway, stay away from the IV access, all of that. That'll come. But I need these people back, and me pushing epi alone isn't going to do it. So I would say what I'd like to get rid of, which if it would be possible, is intravenous access. And I don't mean because it's not effective and it doesn't need to be there, but because it is a difficult task when you are dealing with someone in arrest, because not only are you going to have, they're not perfusing, right? So their vasculature is flat. They don't work with you, and I'm in a situation where my lighting might not be great and all of that, but that would always be what we want, right? The HA says, try 2 IV access attempts, then go to IO. But I'll tell you what we actually did until more help arrived, and then we would achieve IV access. We would begin, so get the monitor on, someone's doing CPR. So the monitor's doing its thing at this point. I could leave the monitor, I'm getting access, but tell you what, I'm not spending several minutes on getting access and potentially missing it, which would be a disaster. Correct. Boom, we'd go right to an IO, tibial tuberosity. And for our friends out there, our lay fans, an IO is intraosseous. We actually drill into the bone, sounds barbaric, and we get access via the medullary cavity, which is wild, right? You could push medications through bones. Who knew? I didn't back then, but that's what we can do. So when you have limited staffing and you want to establish access stat, that's the way we went, because you really can't, well, some people do, but you can't miss tibial tuberosity IO. Can you miss an IV? Hell yeah. It's difficult. There's a lot more components. There's blood that could fly around. It's tough. Even on a good day, it can be tough. You have off days with IVs, certainly. So it allowed us instant access. So we have our access point now, and later on, we'll get the IV once we get a little bit more help. And it's much more secure, right? When I have an IV in place, I have the extension set, the needle, and then I have this tegaderm, which is really just a sticker. And when you're moving someone, extrication, arms were the enemy, because you're trying to get them through a door. It's, God damn it, move these out of the way. And it's like that IV could tear right out in a second. And you're like, great, I worked so hard on that. Now the IO can dislodge as well. Not near as easily can the IO dislodge. It's drilled into the bone, and we do have an tegaderm for the IO. It's a securing device, and it's actually, quite strong and durable versus just a sticker. So we have that, and there's less components. Okay. I drill, I put the catheter in, I'm done. Right. The IVs I utilized in the ambulance were really difficult, because once I would get that IV, okay, I'd take off my 10cc syringe, and I had to tamp the vein so that blood, if I didn't tamp the vein, blood show. And some people had the luxury of these ones that self-tamp, so you could take it off, get a cup of coffee. There's going to be no blood. Where for me, it was like tamping this. I mean, it was a pain, and it took a lot of practice. And We're in a fluid environment.
Right.
Some jerk's driving and some brand new person's driving without due regard. You're like, easy on the bumps, bro. I'm trying to establish this IV. So I
Right.
hated IVs in that case. Like I said, no missing, none of that. And also, if I'm going tibial tuberosity, shin bone for our lay friends, I am far away from the chest, from the airway, from the cardiac monitor,
Yep.
right? I'm way down here. So people in the way is some of the worst because that could just cause not just confusion, but it can really it could limit the effectiveness of the skills that we're trying to perform above. So there's so many advantages to it. There's less physical interruption. So in closing, I just want to say I'm all for IV access. Ideally, that's what I want, and I will get it. But when you have two people during a code, because other people don't show up right away, get a little help, but
Yep.
I had access instantly and I could focus on what counts because the IV, I could screw around. And if I miss it, oh man, I got to try again. Tick, tick, tick goes the clock. So again, want to make sure I clear, not against IVs, all for it. But in this particular pre-hospital situation, I bang out the IO and then I could work on the monitor while my friend is compressing.
I will say in hospital, there are times where you have patients that just have IV access too. Like they don't have, a more invasive line. They don't have a central line. They don't have a port. They don't have, anything other than an IV. We think that they're going home. So maybe the IV was removed or they just have some like crappy little catheter that, it's like a tiny little 22 in their wrist. You
Right.
can't resuscitate through that. So that happens in hospital too, where, someone arrests and it's like, oh my God. And people are like, everyone's on every limb trying to get an IV. And, you know, there are, nurses state to state, the scope of practice is different, but nurses can place IOs but they make it as a lot of places have it that only physicians can place IOs and only for in hospital and only if we can't get any other access. And,
Wow.
it's just that waiting game again. So sometimes you're in hospital, you're waiting. If everyone's trying to get an IV, they can't get it. You got to wait for somebody to come, the IV nurse to come with the ultrasound. And then it's like, eventually you get it. But as you said, when people are arresting, their veins are like, and so we can try and get it when we're doing compressions. So
Yeah.
we're then perfusing them, but it's still, it's still difficult. And it's one of those things that I wish there was kind of like just a set thing for pre-hospital. Just go for the IO. We don't have to, waste time on the 2 times trying to get an IV. Like I wish it was just
Right.
like a palpable blessing. That's what you did. And same for in hospital. Like if we're really trying, we've got an IO right there. I know it's not ideal, but they're arresting. Let's just get that and then we'll get them the access, like the central access or the larger IVs they need later. Like it's not something that should stress staff or create a barrier at the beginning of an arrest, because that's something that could lead to a delay in defibrillation potentially, or a delay in good compressions,
Yeah.
because people are focused on those little nuances that don't ultimately it matters, but like we want compressions and we need early defibrillation. And, um, so I agree with you on that point. But my thing that actually I would like to remove as a barrier, um, because I think that it's a skill that I would love for everyone to have mastered in like 3 seconds, but it is using a BVM, the bag mask valve, when we are, helping with an airway. So, again, Mike and I have talked about this before with airways and giving breaths. And I think we've talked about it, till we were blue in the face, ironically. But, it's a difficult skill. So even for in hospital, when someone is, unresponsive. So now they are in cardiac arrest and we're doing compressions and people will go, we have an ambu with a face mask at every headboard. You go, you put it on the patient and people can't get a good seal, just for various reasons. That's just how their face is, or it's a man with a beard, or, we've talked about all these different reasons. It's a really difficult skill and it seems really easy and they teach it in every BLS class and every CPR class. It's a really hard skill and people
Right.
waste time trying to get these breaths in and they take more time off the chest and they just waste time when we should be doing compressions and doing other things. And then if they don't want to use the bag mask valve, then there's all these different opportunities. There's, LMA, laryngeal mask airways, there's eye gels, there's all these different things that you can put in people's mouths to try and like help and give them airway. And I think it gets overwhelming to people. So I think the barrier is either like just no one focus on that until either respiratory or anesthesia comes for in-hospital arrests,
Yeah.
or just make it a standard thing that like, yeah, give it your best shot with the bag mask valve, but like just holding it over the patient's face and having oxygen pumping in, I feel like is good enough. I don't want to waste time trying to get a ceiling, trying to see chest rise. It's just not, I don't know. I don't see the benefit.
Well, I think that's a great point because, and if you're not seeing chest rise, if you take just an HA class, that's the metric, right? Chest rise and fall. So if I'm doing it on a real person and I don't see it, I'm like, I'm not doing it right. Hold on to those compressions first because I want to get this right. And then these people are in VFib or something. VFib doesn't last, right? So we got to get on it. And I totally agree. I wish there was more emphasis on airway is obviously important, right?
Right.
But right away, let's take a second and realize what's going to bring them back. And also, like you said, bagging is so difficult. It's so difficult, even especially like single rescuer, which is how it's taught in AHA classes.
Yep.
Your technique could be perfect, but when our mannequins, CPR mannequins, chiseled jaws, right? No beards, no jowls, no
Well,
emesis, no blood, no sputum. All day long, I'll bag this person. But
no
a
teeth.
real person, real people, everyone varies, anatomical variation. So it's like getting caught up in that bagging is so bad. It's like, just like you said, that delay, we can't delay. Delay's
Right.
not allowed if it could be avoided.
Mhm.
So couldn't
And
agree more.
it also sends people spinning, whether it's the IV access or the BVM and not being able to get a good seal. It will set a tone for the arrest, and somebody will be spinning out, and it just puts a vibe out there for the room, and people are like, "Oh my God," and they get set down a rabbit hole that's like, that's not where we need to go. Let's just focus on the meat and potatoes. Let's focus on the compressions. Let's focus on early defibrillation, and then, we don't need to add any more stress to a kind of chaotic, stressful scene.
That is an incredibly good point. Like a contagion, perhaps, of say, I tried to bag and I failed, and maybe I'm a little newer. I'm like, I got to redeem myself here. And like, I might get a little more nervous. I'm like worried everyone thinks I'm I'm inefficient or not a good practitioner. And then it just like, you can't cast a pall over the situation. That is, and that's not spoken about enough. Like, that's such a great point. I'm going to make you feel a little bit nervous now by my energy. And then in point, that'll translate. And all of a sudden we're like, this code's going to hell. And it doesn't have to.
Yeah, it's like
It doesn't
like
have
Chicken
to.
Little. It's Chicken Little with the skies falling, and then everyone's like, "Oh my God," and it's not. We just need to.
No,
We just
it
get it
doesn't have to fall. It doesn't have to fall. Reset. But
All right.
but I
Well,
know that feeling. I know that feeling when you do something not how it should look, and you're like, oh, I suck.
oh, I know. Yeah, I mean, everyone knows that feeling, and then I've seen the contagion though. I've seen like me, and then set somebody else off. So it's,
Yeah.
I've been
It's
Chicken
like
Little too. So
spreading the virus. Sorry
yeah.
about that.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for reaching out. And hey, code headers, keep it up, and until next time.
You've got questions, and we've got answers. Ask a CodeHead.